to get better. And Jordan was praying and praying, and things were seeming like they were trending upward. But then shortly afterwards, things began to go downhill. Things took a turn for the worse. And unfortunately, she didn't make it. She eventually died just 10 months after her diagnosis. And Jordan was devastated, as you can imagine, to have anyone close to you die, but to have a spouse pass away. And Jordan said that, man, I was just so completely crushed in that moment. I remember him saying, I believe and I felt like God betrayed me in that moment. Meanwhile, Jessica, who is from the DC area, was newly married, few months into her marriage, and one day her husband was in a motorcycle accident, and she got word that she needed to come to the hospital. They were taking him for treatment. But before she even got to the hospital, because of internal injuries, her husband didn't make it. And I was talking with Jessica just a couple of weeks ago, and we were in a group together, and she was recalling the story, and she said, I remember feeling like, God, you got this wrong. And she talked about how this completely rocked her understanding of faith, her understanding of what it really means to follow Jesus. And both Jordan and Jessica had their faith tested in the most crushing way. But fortunately for them, the story did not end there. Jordan was visiting some friends down in DC, and he had heard about Jessica. He had read a couple of her blogs because she had begun to write about her grief. And they were these two young people who found themselves in this very unfortunate situation. And they eventually became friends, and they eventually got married. And now they're married today, and they've got two beautiful boys, and they're pastoring this great church in Harlem, New York. The question that I continue to have, and the question that I'm sure many of us would have in that kind of situation, is how do you keep your sanity? Like, how do you make it through a situation like that? What keeps you grounded? How do you stay in a good place? And you might be thinking to yourself, well, Pastor Jay, I'm also thinking about how you said that this sermon series that we're in right now is called The Good Life. And there's nothing about this that sounds all of that great. Yeah, it ended okay, but like, man, that's some rough stuff. And I would say, yes, it is about the good life. But in this good life, Jesus also said that we would have trouble. And this is also why Jesus said that his desire for us is to be fruitful. Meaning that there's some things in our lives that he wants to see produced. And one of those things that he wants to see produced is a fruit of the Spirit called joy, which is what we're zooming in on today. And when I think about Jordan and Jessica's story, I think about how they talked about this real challenge they had, this real wrestling match that they had to remain connected to God, to remain connected and steadfast in their walk with Jesus. And this is an interesting thing about joy, because it's not limited to happiness, which means that we have to have good things happening in our lives. No, it's actually a lot deeper than that, a lot broader than that. And I remember when I was growing up, we used to sing this song in church: this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away. The synopsis of the song is that, like, the joy that I have, like, it can't be contained in what's happening in this world. It's broader, it's bigger, it's deeper than that. It does not come from this world. It isn't circumstantial. And I'm thinking of my friend today, Pastor Vernon Gordon, who just had a major surgery when he was young. He had cancer, and he had to have part of the bone in his leg removed, and he just had to have it replaced. And I just saw a post from him a couple days ago where he said, joy is a conscious choice, and we have to choose joy no matter what our circumstance and our situation is, because joy is the ability to maintain footing and grounding in all circumstances. Now, here's the thing. Here's the caveat, because I know how we can be in church world, and I know how we can just tell people, oh, it's going to be all right. No, listen, it doesn't mean that I'm going to feel good in every circumstance. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be unfazed in every circumstance. I might be sad. I might be frustrated. I might be upset. But it means that I will be good when it's good, and I will be good when it ain't all good. That's why this joy is not of this world. Because no tangible thing can do this for us. So this weekend, we're going to unpack this concept of joy, looking again at John chapter number 15. Now, for some of you who were with us last week, or some of you who watched the video, we were in John 15 again. I thought that we should just continue, but let me just recap the series for those who are visiting with us or those who've been away for a little bit. In this series, The Good Life, we opened up with Jesus saying, hey, listen, don't worry. Don't worry. You can't add to your life by worrying. That's why we have high levels of anxiety and all sorts of things going on, because we are worried about a lot of things. And Jesus said, hey, listen, don't worry, because I got everything taken care of. Just seek me first and everything will be all good. Second week, Pastor Jamaica from Church at the Well in DC talked about holy rest. Jesus invites us into holy rest by giving to him the things that we are concerned about, the things that we are weighed down by. And then last week, we talked about how our results are in our roots. Like what we produce is the result of what we are connected to. And Jesus' words this week is a continuation of what he was already saying to his disciples in John chapter 15. And listen, we need to understand this, and I mentioned this last week, that the context of what Jesus is saying is really important here, because they just had the Last Supper. He's just been with them for the last time. They have no idea what's actually about to change. They have no idea that the world is about to be turned upside down. They have no idea it's about to be super chaotic. They have no idea what's going down, but Jesus does. And so he says, listen, you're going to be tempted, but I need you to remain connected to me. Just remain in me. Don't disconnect. Just remain in me. Because here's the thing. It's normal for us to disconnect in moments that are uncomfortable for us. The moment it gets just a little bit uncomfortable, we go in the other way. That we do it in relationships, we do it with jobs, we do it in all kind of certain situations. Hey, listen, it's a little tight for me. I think I'm going to go over here, right? And when we do that, oftentimes we're missing an opportunity that God is trying to take to grow us. So we pick up in verse number 9 in John 15, as Jesus is continuing to implore his disciples. Here we go, just 3 verses. It says, as the Father has loved me, this is Jesus talking, I have also loved you. Remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. I want to just use for a subject for this message today, how to get joy. How to get joy. Now, I will be willing to receive any sort of pushback from anyone who would disagree or have another thought about what I'm about to say right now. See, I don't think we really know true joy, because most of us don't know real love. I'm not talking about what Mary J. Blige was talking about, real love. No. I'm talking about like what Jesus is saying, real love. And we don't know real love because our world doesn't know the value of remaining, right? Because we just disconnect all the time for just the littlest things. And primarily the world that we live in is a hookup culture. Now, I'm not talking about explicitly sexual, but I'm just talking about how we just hook up for short-term benefits, right? We just kind of hook up with this person, or we just hook up with this thing, or we just hook in because we're trying to get an immediate return on the hookup, right? We ain't trying to remain. We ain't trying to go long-term. We ain't trying to invest deep. We're just trying to hook up, right? And so we say things like, well, just do whatever makes you happy, right? Or I'm going to just do what I feel like doing, right? That's what we say, right? We don't say things, or we usually don't say, well, do what makes you better in the long run. We ain't thinking about the long run. We're thinking about right now. Jesus demonstrates a life of remaining, a love that remains. And although he experiences significant suffering, he also has significant security. And that's what joy is. If you're taking notes, this is what joy is. It is a non-circumstantial stability or security. That's what we want, right? Just stability and security that is not based upon circumstances. Yet in our lives, we pursue money, we pursue relationships, we pursue education, we pursue all of these things that we think is going to give us the ultimate security and stability we're looking for. But guess what? You can lose your money, or your money can get funny, as they say. You can lose your job, or circumstances on your job change, or your friends who you thought you were friends, all of those things can go away. But joy is non-circumstantial stability and security. So, in order for us to have complete joy, this is what Jesus said. I normally have 2 or 3 points, but today I only have 1 point. And it's just these 3 words that Jesus said if you want to have complete joy. He said, keep my commands. Not that exciting, right? This is what we call a conditional statement. That really sounds problematic on the surface, right? If you keep my commands, this is Jesus talking, then you will remain in my love. On the surface, this sounds very demanding, sounds controlling, sounds like a very restrictive life, right? Maybe even confirming what some people actually feel about following Jesus. Who wants to be following these rules your whole life? Who wants to be restricted your whole life? I just want to do me. I just want to do what I feel like doing when I feel like doing it. Well, guess what, boo? Jesus already gave you that opportunity. Boo, I said boo. Because listen, in the beginning, when God created us, he gave us what? Free choice. He gave us free will. You already got that. You don't need to ask anybody for that. It was given to you by the mere fact that you were born. You've got free choice. And here's the thing. Because you have that free choice, then here comes along the advertisement for you to go and do whatever you want to do, right? So there's an adversary, there's an enemy, the devil, Satan, whatever you want to call him, who is constantly advertising to take us off course, and he's doing the same type of advertising that he's done from the very beginning. If we hit the rewind button back to Genesis 3, he's having a conversation with Eve, and he's like, Eve, come on, girl, you know, did God really say you couldn't eat that? Is that what he really said? Come on, sis. Listen, God knows that if you eat that, man, you just going to be like him, man. Your eyes is going to be up. Man, that dude holding back on you. And so that's the kind of thing we experience on a regular basis, right? That kind of marketing, right? Even advertisements that we've heard for years, like obey your thirst, right? Whatever you want, just obey it. Listen, some of us have obeyed our thirst and it wasn't good, right? Got a testimony, we ain't gonna tell nobody about it, we just gonna move on and act like it didn't happen, right? Or, hey, you know what? You don't really need to invest all this time, effort, and energy. You just need to take this pill, or you just need to drink these drinks, or you just need to do this thing. You don't need to like really put in work. Yeah, okay. And we fall for these sorts of things every time. Now listen, I'm not saying that marketing is evil. I have a wife who has a degree in marketing, all right? I'm not saying that marketing is powerful. It's very, very, but listen, well, the thing about marketing is it's always trying to pull us into the story so that we can see ourselves in the story. And guess what? The story that is pulling us into isn't always true. Or isn't always telling us the whole truth. It's giving us a slanted point of view, a point of view that is usually not the point of view that God has for us or what God is trying to show us. And we often get in the way of God's plan for us because we have the wrong point of view. We don't see it through our Heavenly Father's point of view. I was thinking of this story one time. Man, I was really young, but I was, very involved in sports, and man, I just loved just playing sports, being around sports, and so my friend's dad was a football coach in our little league that we played in, and I think they had their games on Friday nights, and because I was a little bit younger, we had our games on Saturday morning. Well, I want to go to the Friday night game because that's where the big boys are, you know what I'm saying? So I want to go be with the big boys, and I want to just hang out, and my dad wasn't feeling it. And my dad was like, no, I don't think you should go to this game because it's in South Miami, because that's where I'm from. Hey, that neighborhood in South Miami is not a good neighborhood. And I'm just like begging my dad, like, Dad, but Mr. Giles going to be there and I could be with him. And Pops was like, yeah, but I don't think it's good. But somehow, some way, something happened. And they let me go. So I went. And I was enjoying the game until the game ended. Our club won. We was dope. We would just win games. We were just like that. But it's just a little rivalry, right? It was just a little rivalry, And they started shooting. And y'all, let me tell y'all, I probably ran the fastest time I ever ran in my life. I got on that bus. I was under the seat on the bus. We made it back home. I was so scared that when I came back home, I got in the bed with all my clothes and shoes on. And I remember my dad coming in the room and saying, what happened? And so I told him what happened. And he said, see, son, you need to trust my vision for you. You need to trust when I tell you that you shouldn't go somewhere, why you shouldn't go. Because I have your back. I can see things. See, listen, I didn't have the same point of view as my father. I didn't have enough life experience. I didn't have enough awareness of I didn't even know the neighborhood where I was going. But my father, he knew. So he's telling me, listen to what I'm saying. So in verse number 10 that we just read, Jesus is basically saying, listen, because I love you, I have the best in mind for you. I've got this thing mapped out for you. All you need to do is just stay connected to me because I want you to be productive. I want you to be fruitful. I want you to have a good life. This is what I want for you. And listen, my commands. So when I say keep my commands, right? My commands are not about forcing you. They're about focusing you. And see, that's often what we think is that, oh man, like if I follow Jesus, or man, I gotta do this thing over here. No. Listen. It's about God already setting things up through Jesus for our flourishing and saying, hey, listen, if you just stay connected right here, I got everything mapped out. I'm not trying to force you. I'm just trying to help you develop a focus that's going to help you flourish. It's the place where you're going to experience fullness in all of the things that I have for you. And it doesn't mean in this place you won't experience disappointment. It doesn't mean in this place you won't experience frustration. It doesn't mean in this place that everything is going to be all good. But no, we're connected to the one who wants all good for us, and he is going to produce fullness in and through us. And ultimately, when we do this, this is what produces complete joy in our lives. So let's reframe the commands. And let's think about the commands like this. Think about the commands like conditioning, right? Here's the problem with conditioning. Nobody likes conditioning, right? Nobody likes like, oh man, getting in shape. Listen, I'm an athlete, been an athlete my whole life. I hate running. Like I just don't enjoy it, right? But a part of conditioning is I have to run because I need to get in shape. Because listen, it's my conditioning that's going to keep me. It's my conditioning that's going to help me down the road. Like when you're doing conditioning, you're not doing it for that moment. You're doing it for what's down the road. You're doing it for what is coming. And then when we hit those moments that are tough for us, we hit those moments that are trying for us, then we have the conditioning to push through. Because if we have the right focus, our stability is not predicated upon our circumstances. So when Jesus says, keep my commands, that Greek word keep means to watch, which is a matter of focus. So Jesus is basically saying, hey, listen, don't disconnect from me. Just keep your focus. Because what we focus on is actually what produces things in our lives. Where we're not focused, we can't expect to receive things that we hope to happen in our lives, right? Our conditioning, which is following the commands that Jesus has given to us, that's what's going to keep us right. And here's the thing that Jesus said before we just get ready to wrap this up, right? Jesus said, I'm just telling you this so that my joy can be in you and your joy can be complete. This is the reason why I'm telling you this. Let me see if I can land the plane for us like this and we can get out of here. One of the main reasons why we don't experience fullness in our lives is also 3 words. So Jesus said, keep my commands. But the reason why we don't experience the fullness or the things that he has for us is because we have a lack of focus. So Jesus is basically saying, okay, keep my commands, stay focused. Like the commands are your conditioning. And our decisions, listen to this, our decisions are either keeping us in focus or they're causing slow drift. They're either keeping us in focus or they're causing slow drift. I just need to pause right here because this is not in my notes. But this is the reason why prayer is so important. Because what it does, prayer is a regular refocusing. That's all it is. It's a regular refocusing. And this is why it's important for us to incorporate this in our lives every day. Like, it's really not even about pausing to have a conversation with God. It's about pausing to commune with God, to be with him, to refocus ourselves. And so the result, thinking about decisions, all right, they're either keeping us in focus or they're causing slow drift. The result of where we are is usually not one decision. It's a combination of decisions. So that's why after a year or 5 or 10 or 25 years down the road, we have drifted because of our decisions. And practically, I wanted to just paint this picture for you and help you understand like what this is like. This is one of the reasons why it's not good to be in a boat. Think about being in a boat. It's one of the reasons why it's not good to be in a boat without an anchor. Because the main purpose of an anchor is to keep the boat from drifting off course. And what usually causes the boat to drift off course is wind, right? The wind is moving the water, okay? But let's just think about wind for a minute. Let's just think about wind in terms of life. You know, sometimes the wind is nice and it's blowing and it's good, you know. It's cool, right? It's not like, you know, a storm or anything. But if we're not careful, that little slight wind can take us off course too. Yes, we can still enjoy it, but it can over time, and before we know it, it can lead us astray. And so the winds of life is not just about the storms and the big things, it's also about in those little moments too. And so the way the anchor works is literally the anchor digs into the seafloor, and every time the boat moves, it just digs in a little bit deeper. It just digs in a little bit deeper. And I found out that an anchor needs to be, and I think this math is right, I think that the anchor needs to be 5 to 7 times the depth of the sea. So wherever depth you're in, that's what the anchor, because it needs to be able to reach the bottom, and it needs to be able to hold the boat. And what the anchor does is it provides a sense of security that no matter what happens, we're going to be good. And this is what Jesus' love is like. It's like an anchor. And this is why he says in just this passage of scripture in John 15, this is why he mentions the word remain 11 different times in 11 verses. I think he's trying to tell us something important. His love provides us with a sense of security, which that security is what brings us joy. And this is why I believe that love is the first fruit of the Spirit. Because think about it for a second. Like if you're experiencing Jesus' love on this level and you're remaining in his love, then he says you can get joy. All right? So that means that your joy is not predicated upon what's happening around you, your circumstance, right? And so if you have joy on that level, then you can have peace, right? And if you can have peace, then you can have patience. Because you ain't worried about, you know, all the stuff that's like you can just take your time. You're not rushed. And if you got patience, then it's easy for you to be kind and display goodness, right? And then if you have all of these things working together, well, it's a lot easier to be faithful. And then you can express gentleness and self-control. But it all starts with being anchored in God's love. This is why he says, I want you to be fruitful. And the kind of fruit he's talking about are these fruit of the Spirit. It's not happening without being anchored and remaining in Jesus' love. As a matter of fact, Jesus is basically saying, your joy won't be complete if you don't remain. It's going to be incomplete. And I must remind us that joy is not the absence of drama, but it is the result of being anchored in Jesus' love. So here's the thing as we close. I think there are 2 next best steps for us. I think the first next step is for the group who just is completely disconnected from Jesus. Maybe you never had a relationship and you need to establish one, or maybe you have a relationship, but you just kind of drifting. Jesus said, listen, you got to remain in me. And for some of us, that means we got to connect. And so you can do that easily today by just making a decision and just opening your heart and saying, Jesus, I just need to connect. Or I need to reconnect. The second next best step for us is to confess where we're feeling tempted to disconnect. And let me just explain it to you very practically, because I think sometimes we think too big in this situation. When something happens in your life and you don't know what to do, one of the ways we regularly disconnect is we try to do stuff on our own. We don't pray, we don't pause, we don't seek to say, God, help me, give me wisdom. And that just happened to me this week. I was trying to figure out something, and I was really processing, and something was really weighing on me. And I was like, man, you know what? I just took the moment to just pause and said, like, Holy Spirit, help me. Because I knew in that moment I was about to drip, I was about to do what Joshua does, which is try to make things happen. And when I look back over the Joshua trend of trying to make stuff happen, it's a lot of stuff that didn't happen right. So that is thinking of a scenario where we feel tempted to disconnect. So I'm going to ask our prayer team to come. Because if you're in one or two of those categories, I want you to come. You don't have to, but I would love for you to come and have our prayer team pray with you. And we'll have our, Melissa, are you coming to sing? Okay, Melissa's going to come and lead us just in a time of worship. And remember that the point of the message today is how to get joy. And joy is what Jesus wants us to have. And that is what helps us to enjoy or to engage in the good life. I'm going to pray for us. Melissa will lead us in a time of worship. And then this will just be your time to respond in whatever way you want. Whether you want the prayer team to come pray with you, you want to release, or you identified a place where I feel like I'm going to disconnect, or you need the opportunity to actually connect with Jesus. God, we thank you so much for who you are. Thank you for your son, Jesus. Thank you for how he knew before we knew that we would have the tendency to disconnect. And so he was saying to his disciples then, and he's saying to his disciples now, don't disconnect. Remain. Don't disconnect. Remain. Don't disconnect. Remain. Help us to remain in your love so that our joy can be complete. In Jesus' name, it is so.